heads up, we will be recording this session, and we can share this out to you in a follow-up email as well, so you can have that at your disposal. We will be doing Q&A sessions in the middle and at the end of this presentation. So please enter any questions that you have or any responses into the chat there, and either Tony or I will respond to them, and we'll review the list during those Q&A sessions as well. Okay, so to get things started here, get the slides moving. So the first thing I want to do is introduce you to your Ingram, Micro, and Nutanix team. First on the list from left to right, we have Zach Ward, who is our solution sales specialist here at Ingram Micro. He is in charge of partner enablement, new partner onboarding, deal registration, and then any other non-technical needs like quote or order questions and certification mapping. The second one, that is me, Tim the Tam. I am here to help out with any technical questions on the platform, provide any deep dive training, assistance with any solution sizing, and also training with the technical certifications as well. The guy in the middle there is Barrett. He is our vendor business manager. He handles the relationship between Ingram Micro and Nutanix. Then we have Tony Lawry, who's here on me with this call on this webinar. He is the channel sales engineer for Nutanix, and he's essentially my tech counterpart on the Nutanix side of the house. And then we also have David Chucky Goodness, who is the inside distribution sales manager for Nutanix, and is essentially Zach Ward's counterpart as well. So just that's everybody on the team there. So the first thing we'll do is kind of go over the agenda of what we're going to do here today. We basically have 4 key pieces that we're going to review with you here. The first is that we have VMware and Nutanix together, the competitive landscape, the live demo of moving to Nutanix, and we're going to talk a little bit how we can optimize your investment as well. So the first piece is VMware and Nutanix together. So now, why does Nutanix HCI run great with VMware? Well, I mean, those bullets right there really kind of state it simply. It is simple. It's designed with that choice from the start. We support any x86 platform. We support any hypervisor, and we really try to, allow any situation to be able to work with our platform there. We were built to deliver a robust, easy to deploy platform, and we can put VMware right on there. We can put VMware's ESXi right on the AOS storage platform. And we do have over 10,000 customers that run ESXi on our platform as well. So it has been tried and true with the customers there too. So now there are 5 main reasons that you'd want to run Nutanix with VMware. First is that choice of hypervisor, like I said. The architecture was designed for that scalability and flexibility. You have the seamless integration. We support key VMware components, which are fully integrated into existing vCenter management stacks, such as vMotion, DRS, and high availability. We also do have advanced Nutanix options to plug in easily to your VMware environment, such as files, objects, and database automation. We also have a fully managed mixed stack. Nutanix Cloud Manager unifies management, analytics, and orchestration of your entire Nutanix and VMware environment right through Prism. One nice little management tool there for you. And we'll go over that in a little bit. We also simplify planning, monitoring, remediation, and application automation for your complete VMware environment, both on hyper-converged and traditional 3-tier architectures. We also have advanced storage capabilities with superior snapshots. Incident clones are right built into the Nutanix core architecture so that you can retain better performance and uptime, in addition to having the simplicity of hyperconverged without having to give up that critical storage functionality. And we can also help make hybrid cloud a reality. We make managing your public and private cloud solutions simple, having the interoperability and mobility of hyperconverged along with that unified management GUI and Prism Central, where you can manage all of your clusters either on-prem or in the public cloud space. So the next section we're going to talk about here is the competitive landscape. So there's a couple subsections, I should say, to this. We're going to talk a little bit about Nutanix AOS versus VSAN, a little bit about Prism, how we handle failures, and we'll also talk about our superior snapshots and how those differ. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about here is the Nutanix web scale architecture. Now, some problems with the public cloud, you can deal with outages, complex networking requirements, security issues, and high cost. The Nutanix solution It's simple, massively scalable, predictable and flexible capacity, and it allows your team to focus on applications, not just putting out fires in the infrastructure. Now, one key component on this slide here is that every node in a Nutanix cluster has a CVM, or controller virtual machine. So as you're adding nodes, you're adding performance as you go. So in a traditional 3-tier storage system, you have 2 controllers and your performance is limited by that. So in this case, with Nutanix, you're scaling out that performance as you go, which is extremely beneficial. So to get into a few of the differences here, I like to use this analogy where it basically compares grains of sand to boulders. Now, what I mean by that is in the AOS storage system, the pieces of data are broken down into 4 megabyte extent groups. So these little tiny chunks of data that are handled by the metadata system that we use. Whereas in VSAN, their chunks of data are 255 gigabyte blocks. And that can lead to a lot of network traffic when there's an issue or a failure. And we're going to get into that in a second here. So with the vSAN architecture, some key things to note is that every disk group does need a cache drive. This can create wasted capacity, and if a cache drive fails, it takes that whole disk group down with it. So these disk groups also need to essentially be planned ahead of time beforehand during the purchase phase of things. So that puts a little bit of extra planning on the shoulders of who's building out this IT infrastructure there for you. Now with the Acropolis data pool, or the Acropolis storage pool, it is a unified storage pool. So all these drives contribute together to form one big volume group, and it allows you, so you have no wasted capacity to the cache drives. It is algorithm driven, so it automatically tiers data on, like, hot data will go to the NVMe and SSD drives, and the colder data will be automatically put down to the HDD tier to maintain that performance. And also we have the low impact failure piece where we are self-healing. So once something goes wrong, there's an immediate response to getting that repaired and back up to speed in the storage pool there. So now another analogy I like to use besides the sand and boulder is that when you're looking at a vSAN failure and if you lose a block, that 255 gigabyte block, it's kind of like an FTP file transfer. So you have one source of data going to one destination on your platform. So that way you're kind of saturating that one network trunk that goes to that. Whereas in the case of Nutanix, going back to the SAN, it's more like a BitTorrent download. Now, I'm sure a number of us have used music downloads over the years, but essentially, way to look at this is you have all of these seeds across the cluster feeding into this repair. So the bigger the cluster gets, the repairs actually become faster, which is really wonderful. This slide here kind of gives a little bit of a summary on that. So again, low impact self-healing, larger clusters rebuild faster, and the rebuilds begin immediately. And on the side of VMware, you have those higher impact rebuilds. There is also a about 60-minute timetable where it waits to rebuild, and this saturates your cache as well. So there's a little bit of a delay there as well to be aware of. So the next thing we're going to talk about is Prism. So normally in a normal environment, you have all of these different tools that need to have a specialized person be an expert on. And you have tools for managing your servers, managing your security, managing your storage, your data protection, etc. Now, the great thing about Nutanix and Prism is that we bring all of those pieces down into one nice interface there. This is one of the reasons why so many common tasks are able to be done just by your regular technicians, as this platform is easy to learn. It's very simple, very straightforward, and very intuitive. So you have less of an issue with waiting for team members to file tickets, set up downtime, and things along those lines for upgrades and things along those lines. The next section we're going to talk about here is just handling failures. We'll talk about reads, writes, migrations, and this is really important to show, is it shows how we achieve that continuous availability. So the first slide here, this shows how data is written and distributed in the cluster for high ability. First, that data is written locally. And then at that point, it is distributed out to the rest of the cluster. Only after both copies of these data are written is that task considered complete. Now we're talking about reading. The data is read locally to keep that high performance by default, and it is only read remotely if the local data is not present due to a disk failure or something like that. So you can see here, all of that data is read locally. So now in the case of a migration, these slides show how when a host is moved during a live migration, that data moves to keep that data with it locally, and extra copies of that data are cleaned up after the fact around the cluster. So you can see the host moving over, the data is local with the red cube, but then we move the blue and the white in there to keep that data locality performance like we were talking about. And the last piece here, we're going to talk about the case of a host failure and what happens there. First, the VM will move to another node, and then that data is again copied over for that data locality to maintain that high performance. Okay. And then in the case of a CVM or a controller VM going down, we are able to access that data through the network, and then eventually it will rebuild locally to maintain that data locality if that CVM cannot come back up. So
Let me jump in here real quick for you, Tim.
Sure, Tony.
So when it comes to CVM auto pathing, right? As Tim said, the guest VM does not move, right? The other CVMs in the cluster take over for communicating with the guest VM, which means that, you know, less traffic congestion and less relocating of your data. So in a sense, these CVMs work together to communicate and update everything in the cluster while that CVM is going down for any upgrades or failures or whatever that happens. So it's one of the most one of my most favorite things I like about Nutanix when it comes to just the redundancy that takes place.
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate that. And to continue with that, one final piece here about going back to again with the data locality. The scale keeps that hot data local very non-disruptively. The local reads avoid having network bandwidth congestion becoming a bottleneck. Flash is now equal to and soon to be exceeding speeds of even 100 gig networking. So having that data locality is even more important with that said, especially if you're not running 100 gig networks. Reading that local IO delivers that most consistent performance. And while you're only writing one replica copy locally and then one remotely, that effectively removes half of the write IO from your network that occurs during this process as well. Okay, so the last piece of this particular section is talking about the superior snapshots. So now the biggest thing about our snapshots that are different is I'm sure you've heard, you know, snapshots before. It's kind of a common term as far as storage goes. But why our snapshots are optimized is we use read on write when creating these snapshots. This requires 1/3 of the IO needed for your standard copy on write snapshots with minimal CPU overhead. The snapshots are independent of the vdisks, which allow you not only to roll back, but to roll forward as well in case you dial it back a little bit too far. The snapshots are created locally, but they can be stored locally or remotely based on schedules that you construct with no limits on how many that you have. We also have cross hypervisor disaster recovery, so you can replicate from a VMware cluster to Acropolis hypervisor and then back again if you so choose. And we also have application consistent snapshots available. Excuse me. This captures data consistent with a single point in time for the VM as a crash consistent snapshot would. But in addition, that app consistent snapshots capture the data in the memory and all the transactions that are in progress. So it ensures you lose no data there. We also have a key feature of self-service restore. This allows VM admins to perform self-service recovery with minimal admin intervention needed. This is also on a per VM basis, so that access is defined by administrators, and once enabled allows the admins to manage snapshots within the VM list all the snapshots and mount and unmount them as well. So a little bit more on how VMware does their snapshots. Their snapshots are cache in memory. It is not replicated or committed to storage. They recommend regularly checking the cache usage and data store capacity when using those snapshots. So they kind of give you a little bit of warning about that. They're also limited to 32 snapshots per VM and don't have schedule or retention periods. So you can see some of these key differentiators between how we do snapshots there.
So the other thing, let me jump in again, when it comes to the VDI, right? Especially when it comes to the app pools that run, just to bring it back to what Tim was saying earlier about why Nutanix and VMware work great together, is because those VDI, those snapshots, when you're running on a Nutanix platform, you're running Horizon View within a Nutanix platform, the snapshots remain smaller. The smaller your snapshots, the faster your app pools, or the faster your desktops boot up. So again, that integration it kind of makes for like that happy marriage, let's just say, when it comes to those snapshots, when you're dealing with the app volumes and things like that.
Thank you, Tony. And that part there, that ends that section. That brings us to our first Q&A section. So let's see if we have any questions in the chat here to go over. Tony, do you have anything there to pull up? I don't have the chat here.
No question, man. You know, silence is golden, and
Okay.
you know, you're doing a great job.
Thank you. Well, again, everybody, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat, and we do have another Q&A session that we will review at the end of this presentation. But if we don't have any questions so far, we will move forward, and we'll move forward into the live demo. So Tony, if you want to steal the screen share away for me, and we can get rolling on the
Let's do that, man.
there.
Okay, so when it comes time, we get a lot of questions about this, like how do I move my workloads from another platform, another hypervisor, or even between clouds, right? So we have a product and software called Nutanix Move. Nutanix Move is actually ingrained into a multitude of our products, not only just for migrating your apps from hypervisor to hypervisor. You know, some of our applications actually use pieces of Move in DR. So like our products like Leap or Xyleap and things like that have that base of Move ingrained in it. So when it comes to Move, you can run this either via .exe on your desktop. You can run it via OVA or Nutanix's QCal, which you would launch within your virtual environment. Now, upon logging in to Move, you're going to see kind of a dashboard like this. Okay, of course, mine is a little bit more populated, but when you first launch this, you're going to have to add in your different environments. So let's just take a look at it real quick from left to right. So my environments here, you see my 2 VMware environments and then my AOS environment that's running. And on the top here, you see everything that's in progress. So it's a nice little dashboard so you can understand the status of your environment, right? So you can see that there's 2 VMs ready to cut over. We have a test network that you can set up and view anything that's failed. So, that Sunday night cutover is very easily viewed if you need to just jump into the system real quick. To look at this real quick, you can see that we have a couple of VMs that are ready to cut over. Actually, what I'm going to do is jump back over here and do a refresh of this environment because I should have more VMs at this time. So I have 7 VMs or 20 VMs. So what I could do is go back into this migration plan and sync the rest of these, but we're not going to do that right now. We will start with showing you how to add an environment. And as I said, you have the choice of migrating from ESXi, AOS, Hyper-V, Azure, and AWS. So, we bring a lot of flexibility into this platform so that you're able to work within your multitude of different options here. So we would tag it with an environment name. We'd also, of course, have the IP or FQDN of that ESXi host or vCenter server, add in our username and password. Of course, I've already added these things in, so let's take a look. We're actually going to be moving this environment today, the VMware 70 environment. And as you can see, we can see all the different VMs that we have scanned, right? During the process. And now let's go ahead and do a migration plan for this. We're going to tag this as VMware.70 or -70 to AOS. Just make it a friendly name. Go to proceed. Now we're going to select a source, and we have a couple of options here, and that's why naming them well allows you to easily identify. And then our target will be the Nutanix environment. Now, the cluster lists only one cluster right now, but if I had multiple clusters listed in here, I would be able to select that. But we're going to go ahead and select the 93 cluster and then the container that runs in that cluster. We'll go to next. Now, this is one of the options that I really like to point out when it comes to moving the environment. You can be selective, you can be surgical in moving what VMs you would like to move. So you don't have to move the whole pool. I know there's a lot of products out there. You have to move, you have to make sure that the VMs that you want to move are in the same storage pool, not with move. So I can select random VMs that I want to move, right? And it shows us here, you can, functionally remove them if you need to. This gives you some more information about those VMs in case. Now, one thing I will point out, in order for this to live migrate, we would have to have these on and VMware tools running, right? So if that was something that we wanted to do, we make sure that this is updated. OS is kind of tagged wrong here, so we'll have to look at that later, but it's not going to affect the functionality. So let's go ahead and click next and move these 5 VMs. We see that it's on the VM network, and you're going to go to the primary network within Nutanix. Now, if you had a test network set up, you can actually run a test and make sure this was going to push through. We'll click next. It's going to check all the capacity and make sure you have enough space within that target. It takes a second as it's checking capacity. And now we're on to the next page. Now we have a preparation mode that we can actually do an automatic or manual. We're going to leave it as automatic, but manual just allows you to run some scripts to execute and run on those local VMs that you need to. Next, when it comes to the credentials, if you need Nutanix guest tools installed or any other functioning updates to run, you can actually tag these with the username and password. You do have the option to change those settings individually if there may be like a database server that's running a different password or need to be manually moved. You can do that as well. Of course, you can work with your time zone, have it change. Another key thing when it comes to move is you can actually retain the MAC addresses from your source VM, which is very important when you're running a specific piece of software. I had in the past when I was boots on the ground printing software from our marketing team or the mailroom that needed to be licensed to the MAC address, and moving or migrating a VM would change that MAC address. Well, here you can tell it to retain that MAC address as well as the IP address. So, again, moving things across no matter where, as long as you have the services and the DHCP services and IP services to connect, you can retain those IP addresses, right? And lastly, you can actually have it remove the VM tools. Next, when it comes to scheduling, you can actually schedule the seating, right? So, when I worked for the DoD, we could only do certain things on Saturdays and Sundays, right? So when it comes to that, would we rather go in on a Sunday and move this, or we can schedule it per se on a Sunday or Saturday and have that happen for us. And all we have to do is monitor the task. We'll go ahead and click next. This is going to say I don't have operating credentials. I already know that. We'll continue, and it'll run through the processes creating this migration plan. I'll give it a second here. All right, so now we have our migration plan. This is the last page, and it gives us a quick overview just to do a double check and say, okay, you're moving this from VMware 70 to our POC 093 to this container, and here's the networks, and I can do a save. I can just save it, or I can tell it to save and start. We're going to hit save and start. Here's a new migration plan. It's going to validate it for us. And as it updates, it should give us an updated number. Now, this is going to take a moment to run through for us. All right, saying it's in progress. So now we can follow this progress along if we wanted to, specifically to this environment, and see how it seeds and things like that. The other feature I really like is that as changes happen, you can actually kick this off and have it update the seed as long as you haven't cut over. So maybe you have a dev team that's working on a specific project, and they say, oh, you can't move this just yet. You can actually have it and updating as it goes along. So another good feature, and like I said, as it's starting to seed, it's giving you an updated status. And once this finishes, if we have time, I'll come back and do the official cutover so that we can see it land in the appropriate environment on the 093 environment. But that's it. I mean, move is very simple when it comes to this, migrating your VMs. So let me check chat. Are there any questions about this? Right now, doesn't appear so. So, Tim, we're ready to cut back over to you if you are ready.
I am good to go. Let me steal that screen there from you. Oh, share screen. Do that. Okay. Okay. Can everybody see this slide again now?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Tony. Okay, so that we'll round back to the demo there after we go through this last section here, and hopefully we'll be up and ready to be able to view that that transition there.
Yeah.
But the last section that we have here is a little bit talking about optimizing investments. This is one of the most important benefits of hyperconverged is how it enables you to optimize your IT investments. So now the first thing to kind of go over here is, how we offer flexible scaling. The performance and capacity can scale linearly. As I kind of noted earlier, those controller VMs keep that performance as you're adding these nodes. But one of the most challenging and costly aspects of designing a traditional 3-tier solution is knowing how many resources will be needed over that whole life cycle. Whereas in hyperconverged, like I said, scale linearly and predictably due to the core architecture that automatically redistributes that data as new nodes are added using that built-in node expansion tool. This way, you can buy what is needed for today and the very near future and add nodes to scale different resources as they are needed. This pay-as-you-go model is just like how the web scalers do it, and that's kind of where we got the inspiration from that. So if storage nodes are running out faster than compute, you can add a storage-heavy node. If only more storage is needed, we can add storage-only nodes without having to license a hypervisor. With that said, you can mix and match all flash and hybrid nodes within the same cluster, so you're not really constrained by your original cluster design, which is really nice. And then also, if compute resources are running out faster than storage, you can also add a compute-only node to support more VMs without adding more storage to that same cluster. So the ability to purchase what for the short term and buy more resources as they're needed can take a lot of guesswork and friction out of buying infrastructure. You no longer need to plan out 5 years in advance on that guesswork, which will in turn save you money and hopefully avoid any issues there. In addition, when you add a node or nodes to the cluster, it really is as simple as plugging in the node into the network and then have it get discovered by Prism on the fly, and it'll tie it right into your storage pool there. And then this way, you can help eliminate need for downtime to grow a storage pool or add compute to your cluster on the weekends and that kind of thing, which can help give time back to your engineers. Speaking from experience, I worked at a data center that we supported a fantasy football league, and every draft season there was always this last minute scramble, and having to make those last knee-jerk reactions can be really painful for your IT staff, and this helps to alleviate a lot of that pain. So that's definitely something to note there. So going back to, again, the predictable performance and scaling, as you add nodes to the cluster, that storage performance increases with it. So not only does that storage performance increase linearly, your applications consistently see that high performance. A lot of this is because of that data locality again. So when data is written by that application, one copy is stored on the same node as the application, so it can be retrieved without needing to cross the network. And this ensures the lowest possible latency, and it prevents the network from being a congestion problem for those very large clusters as well. So now some fun numbers here. Comparing us to legacy architectures, lower cost of ownership, less unplanned downtime, better return on investment and payback, and additional revenue per year is projected. Now, outside of those numbers, we also are obsessed with our customer success. We have a very, very high customer retention rating, and we have a 7-year average net promoter score of 90, which on this chart here, you can kind of see a little bit more of that. You can kind of see how we sit on the tech verticals on the side against some of our competitors there. And then you can kind of see some other companies that you may be familiar with on the right hand side to kind of give you a gauge on how you might recognize that higher net promoter score. And then the last slide we have here is these last two charts, show that we're not just a competitor in the hyper-converged space, but we're a leader in execution, current offerings, market presence, and furthest in vision as well. Now that's all that I had here. I don't know if we have any other questions, or Tony, if you want to add anything at the end here. But that is the last of the slides that we have.
Yeah. When it comes to the NPS score, I just want to make people aware that that's a negative, right? 100 to a negative, a positive 100. So the scale is a lot larger. It speaks to how good our NPS rating is. So when you're looking at these numbers, you see, like, a couple of them are on the lower end at 11. That's almost just at the middle. And there are some companies, and we don't represent them here because we don't want to brand bash or anything, but there are some companies out there that are in the negative space when it comes to their NPS scores. The other thing I will point out is that one reason why our score is so good is because of our support, right? When you call into Nutanix support, you deal with that support person all the way through your ticket. It doesn't get handed off to somebody. You have that one direct contact, and they will work with the other entities in Nutanix. Like maybe you're having a problem with hardware, and you're talking with a support tech that knows the hardware, but there might be something he or she may not be clear on. So they'll go tap into a colleague to assist or to get more information about that. That's one of the things that a lot of the entities out there, when it comes to support, you're dealing with tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and it keeps moving up a level instead of dealing with that person. The other factor I will say is that when you call in and maybe you have a problem with a piece of hardware or a piece of software, our technicians are certified in a lot of the different entities. So if you call in, you have an HP machine, you're going to be talking with a support tech that has HP knowledge or Cisco knowledge or Dell knowledge, and that speaks volumes to the way support is traditionally done, and that's a factor of why we are scored so high.
Very good point there, Tony. Thank you. Do we have any questions in the chat there as well? One thing I also kind of threw out there too is we have this tool called Nutanix Test Drive. I highly recommend it for anybody that wants to kind of give it a go. It's a kind of like a guided tour through Prism. So it kind of goes over a lot of the basic functions like creating a VM, managing your storage pool, along with a number of other cool little guided tours there. So I definitely recommend you take a peek at that.
Yeah, when I first joined Nutanix, that's one of the first things I did. I took the test drive because the test drive is guided, right? So, if you're looking at maybe some type of cloud adoption or cloud management, you can actually look into the specific product and it will walk you through, how to use that product. And then once you have a clear concept of how it functions, you can break out of that guided area and toy around with it, tinker around with it, and really get a feel for if it will be the product for your company. So definitely, get out there, take a test drive. It's real simple. You put in your email address, your contact information, of course, but then it shoots you back a key to then access into the test drive. And from there, it's a 4-hour test drive, but you can extend it up to, I believe, 8 hours. So you could be in a Nutanix environment for all day, and you're not limited, right? So if you want to come back and maybe demo it to your VP or demo it to your tech team or whatever, you can come back and launch that test drive again and work within it. And there's some features that are coming up, or you can pause the test drive. Maybe you have to run out, or you have one of those days where you only have a few hours to look into it. You can actually pause it and come back to it. I know that's a future feature that our team is working on. So right now, Tim, I'm gonna grab the screen back from you and just jump into Move. As you can see, I cut over a few of these already, just so you can see the comparison of what it looks like. I can click on this and it will redirect me to the environment that it moved into. And also the couple that have not cut over just yet, it tells you the estimated time. So when I click on these two, it's going to ask me if I want to continue. I go ahead and continue, and it'll proceed to cut the VMs over. It'll work through that process, right? And final sync's in progress. It's quiescing everything. When I jump over to this environment, let's see. It looks like it took me out for a second here. So, all right. So this page here that we were just in, this is our Prism Central environment. And if we had multiple clusters, as I stated earlier, you would see all these clusters listed out. So if you had a bunch of clusters or a bunch of things moving to different clusters, maybe you have a dev, maybe you have a staging cluster, you could actually use Prism Central and hop from cluster to cluster in that fashion. But let's go ahead and go into 093. And as you can see, the dashboard, like Tim said, it's very, very ingenuitive. And you have all the information you need. You know what's going on in your servers. You know what's going on, health-wise, and as far as alerts and things like that go. So let's go into our VMs, and we can see that we cut over these three. They're powered off right now. And if I were to go ahead and power them on one by one, they'd launch. On the other side of things, those VMs on the VMware side have powered off, but they haven't been removed. It's kind of like I don't want to call it a fail safe, but that's kind of what it is. Kind of like a low level backup, let's say. So if you move these VMs over or migrate them and power them on, and for some reason maybe devs code push didn't get into the VM early enough, of course they can come here and add it, but you can go back and resync that if you need to. So, we have a little bit of fail safes put in here for you as well. But as you see, all the VMs 1 through 3 and 7 and 8 have been moved over. And when you go back to the page, it tells you everything's moved over, it's completed, the size, so you compare the sizes. Of course, your main page is updated because I did fail over that VMware AOS cluster as well. So you have 7 completed, 0 failed, and none to move over.
Very good.
That is it.
Cool. Well, I'm gonna steal this back from you here, Tony.
Yep, absolutely.
Pop that into there. Okay. My mouse is not working with me right now. Okay. But again, I want to thank everybody for taking the time out of their day to join us. Hopefully learn some new neat features. As always, please, if you ever have any questions or want to do a deeper dive with us, please reach out either to Zach or myself, and we can get you guys into deep dives on the technical discussion or anything that you want to get involved with Nutanix. We will have a follow-up email coming out that will have the video recording. We will have a podcast that was done by Tony and Brian Bocci. A very good listen if you have a moment to listen to that. And also we will have a request for feedback, and I really hope we can get some feedback from you guys. Really like to know how we did here today, what went well, what were the favorite parts of the presentation, what we could have maybe done more of. We'd like to hear all that feedback from you, and we would really appreciate that. But with that said, I don't know if you have any final thoughts here, Tony.
Nope, I just threw the link for that podcast up in there if people want to grab it to listen to it.
Okay, awesome. Well, I again thank everybody for coming out today, and I hope you have a great and wonderful day. All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.